Hello, welcome back to Emotionally Unavailable. I'm your host, Malisa Hepner. What's very funny to me is that when I'm recording a solo episode, I don't talk all that loud and I have to use the fucking voice enhancer. And then when I'm talking to other people, I'm like yelling the whole time. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to be in the middle. I get quiet when I'm doing the solo because I get embarrassed when my family can just hear me talking to myself. So I got to get over that. Anyway, so today is a solo episode. I have started saying yes to more people lately this week, but they didn't sign up for this week. So we'll just play around, see what the vibes are. Anyways, today was a shit ass day. I'll get into that. But I want to first talk about things that I learned this week, and I'm going to reference a conversation that I had with an old friend over the phone this week. So this is a friend that I think has been trying to communicate this for a while, and I totally misunderstood what he was saying. Okay, hold on. Okay. He sent me something he had written about, well, shit, let me just start from the beginning. Wait, is that violating his privacy? Yes, it is. Okay. I woke up to a message from him. I'll start with what I said. And I said, "Damn, did someone send that to you? That's not the way I would characterize you." And he said, "No, I just wrote it. This is how I think people who are jealous of others feel." And I said, "Hmm." He said, "Just thoughts." I said, "Ah, I see. I agree that people with limited capacity or ability to see themselves go through this process when they see someone have what they wish they have. I think there's a lot of root to the behaviors, but yeah, I agree." So he says, "What does that mean?" I agree that people with limited capacity or ability to see themselves. I said, "I'll explain if you will be patient with my wordiness because that's the only way I know how." He said, "Well, don't make it too long or I'll get confused." I said, "Well, we all have an ego that is in the driver's seat in the psychological sense. The ego is unable to see itself and requires different perspective. Without that perspective, people walk through life blindly, reacting from their ego. And if they aren't willing to gain different perspective, they will never see their ego in the driver's seat." He said, "It's too complex." I said, "Let's try a different way." He said, "How can you say that to someone that's not that immersed in this?" I said, "The ego is the part of us that tries to protect us, but it can't always see its own blind spots. That's why outside perspective matters. Without it, we often react on autopilot instead of making conscious choices." He said, "If the ego is unable to see itself, how can it ever gain another perspective?" And I said, "Oh yeah, great question actually. It's very difficult." He said, "And how do you trust an outside perspective if you don't trust yourself?" And I'm like, "Good question." I said, "Some people never will because their fear will always keep them stuck. Some people will be willing to hear just enough to send them on a path of discovery." He said, "How do you know the other person is not offering help from their ego?" And again, great point. If you ever fucking watch this, I doubt you will, but if you do, great point. I said, "I guess I can only speak for myself here, but I think I was desperate enough for change that I was willing to believe I must not know everything or else I'd be happier." And with my clients, I ask them to trust me. And then in response to the, "How do you know they're not offering from their ego?" I said, "That's tricky because some people are." He says, "Exactly." And I said, "But that doesn't always mean what they're saying isn't true." He said, "My point exactly. How do you know? How do you know for sure? How do they know for sure?" And I said, "I think my point is we can let it make us curious. That's how we begin to see the ego, not really by other people pointing it out, but by someone saying something that makes us willing to look at ourselves." He says, "Interesting." And I said, I have a typo here. Oh, and instead of just reacting from autopilot, being curious about our own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, not believe with such certainty." He says, "I think sometimes exception of the process is so overwhelming and such a daunting process, it might lead one more confused." Then he responded to my not believe with such certainty with, "I'll have to think on this." I said, "And that's where community comes in my humble opinion." He said, "Now that makes it even more complicated." And I said, back to the not believe with such certainty, "What I meant is our reactions to our experiences is just a story we are writing about what it means about others and means about us, or it is recalling a story we wrote long time ago, but we can rewrite them. He said, with community on any given day, one or two of them may not be what you need. And I said, and community doesn't have to be a large group. You are in community when you share yourself with one other person and ask them their thoughts. He said, I think you have, this is the point really right here of what I'm saying. I think you have some outstanding points and perspectives. I think the processes or explanations that could lead people to be even more confused. For example, the words, but we can rewrite them. I completely disagree with this. It is impossible. And I'm like, I support and affirm your right to believe that, but I don't believe it to be impossible. He said, you can't change the story. You can rewrite how it affects you. This simple difference makes a tremendous impact. I said, the story that you have written to create meaning out of your experiences, sure you can. It affects you the way it does because you believe it to mean something about you, or your ego does anyway. But what if it didn't mean any of the things you thought it meant about you or other people? He said, I'm saying you can't change the story, the past. I said, sure, you can't change what actually happened, but you can change the story you made up about what it meant. He says, it is what it is. And I'm like, okay. He said, but you see how you explained the second time is entirely different. I said, well, sure, but we're texting back and forth, which can create some confusion too. But you always do a good job of asking for clarity, and you've taught me how to do that too, just FYI. And he said, I wish you could explain this simpler. I'm saying this again. You have incredible points and I agree with them, but for me, the processes are so complex, and I feel like I get stuck in the discovery stage trying to figure out what it all means, only to never be sure of anything. And I'm going to fucking tell you right there, my whole fucking world shifted because one of my fucking core wounds is feeling misunderstood, which stems from that I'm too much or not enough narrative that we all have. You know, like how much have I preached to you guys about that, right? And you, I don't know if any of you guys have friends that you kind of debate back and forth with about stuff, but this is a friend that we do that a lot. And so um I don't actually like to do that. I don't know if he does. I've never asked. But it's not my vibe. But I have engaged in that practice with him for so fucking long because I felt judged and I felt misunderstood and I felt too much. I felt like he was saying I'm too much. So saying it the way he said it, like, I was like, damn, why? Like, this is such a perfect example of how I was writing this story about being too much. And so everything he would say in contrast or whatever to what I was saying, I just took it to mean I'm too much. Like, I'm annoyed at myself, but also I love whenever I get to see this play out in real life. So that's why I'm sharing it, because this was like literally revolutionary for me. Okay. So I said, thank you for putting it like that. And he said, does that make sense? I'm like, oh my God, it makes perfect sense. So anyway, we went a little, back and forth, whatever, about what we had been talking about, me trying to break it down, whatever. Oh, and then this is what he said. Uh, I said, I can have a lot of fun in the discovery and analysis. I need to remember that others like more concrete ideas. And he said, and to me, it seems like strategic planning with little implementation. And I said, when you've said things like this to me before, I heard criticism and that you believed my perspective to be dumb. But now I hear you saying, yeah, that's great to have an arbitrary map, but I want to actually walk. And then I said, well, maybe not arbitrary, but like a little too detailed of a map. Like I spend all this time creating a map with landscaping and maybe even fun things to do while visiting the location, and maybe others are just wanting actual directions to the spot. He says, I think people want a map and directions, but most can do without tour guides explaining routes they have no intentions of traveling. Oh my God, that was the best shit ever. I was like, thank you. I finally understand. And I can remember this being a thing, like, back when I was fucking learning about nervous system regulation, like the integration piece of things. Like, okay, I can learn breath work, I can learn future self journaling. How does that now translate to when I'm in the middle of a fucking crash out? I have a tool at my disposal, right? Um, and I think, like, if you're my client or in some of these conversations, I hope in these conversations, and I would truly love your feedback. I mean, for real, for real. Um, but I think, like, especially with clients, I'm over explaining shit. So hopefully, hopefully they're understanding what I'm talking about. Like, but I mean, they seem to, but they also see me every week. So, and these are just random little text conversations we get into. So I don't know, but so valid. It's so valid. He's saying, Where's the integration piece?" And I think for me, it was, well, shit, here's some vulnerable. Probably I never got to integration pieces with him specifically because I was so fucking defensive and reactive, feeling like he thought I wasn't smart and didn't know what I was talking about, that I was just like trying to make a point each time we got into a conversation like this. So, anyway, I'm grateful for that conversation because I also learned, like, you don't have to agree with everything I say for me to feel accepted. So, like, just understanding too that what he was saying was, yeah, I don't think you need all that explanation or whatever. Because truly, that's what I do. I probably overly explain because I give all the why, because I want what I say to be grounded in psychology and truth. Sometimes it's grounded in spirituality, and I feel like the intersection between psychology and spirituality is wild. But yeah, so I think that's the thing, is that, like, I disagree with that. I think the why is great, but I can also see why that would get so overwhelming to someone who truly is looking for integration. So I think I need the reminder that, like, some people need chunk, integrate, chunk, integrate. And actually, it's probably just really, speaking of my little educator friends here, really, this probably just says a lot about his learning style too. And this is why in education you do chunk material. So I'm probably giving a whole fucking dissertation. But again, my motivations behind how I approached those conversations really was to defend myself, which also wasn't cool. But I didn't necessarily see that until it was just this whole thing. It was like an aha, la. It was crazy. But so I'm really happy about that because, well, it's always good to feel a little more seen, a little more understood, a little less other, you know? But it's also a good reminder that I need to be able to catch that within myself, that I'm placing myself in an other category at certain times, but especially when we're talking about stuff like this. I'm so fucking passionate about it. So for someone to come at it a little shitty sometimes, or at least me view it being shitty, not even real, but like in my world, if I'm feeling defensive over it. So I thought, anyway, I was like super stoked about that because that feeling too much, not enough thing really drove a wedge in our friendship. So kind of glad that's over. So anyway, another thing that I learned this week was, it's not like I just learned this, but you know, I've been saying grief just really highlights the shit that was already there. And even though these were lessons I've learned previously, I've gotten these deeper understandings, and how much it came home to me that, like, resilience is just as much being able to ask for and receive help from others as it is to try to be some independent person. And so, even if it's just, in my case, asking for help from the universe, that's always a good thing. So, that just felt good to remember that this week and kind of redefine maybe for myself what I felt resilience was. What else? I think that's probably it for that. Now I'll just tell you why I was in such a bad mood. So, this morning, so we are going on like a giant family cabin trip with Brian's family. And I got put in a group chat this morning showing us the accommodations, and they kind of mapped out like how many bedrooms there are, which bedrooms was getting how many people per family. Okay. So like Melissa and Brian, and they put 4. And I don't know, man, it was just so triggering. Like it set me off. Like I started crying in a way that I haven't cried in months. And I mean, I have the most giant headache. I'm so tired. I cried for close to an hour today, and it probably would have continued if I didn't have a client I had to get my shit together for. So, yeah. So there was that, and then also, listen, I fucking hate group text. I hate a group chat unless it's just like a group of friends that aren't trying to plan something and just randomly get like I love a group chat where it's like, "Oh my god, did y'all see this?" Like, a fucking TikTok or whatever, but, like, that's like you can come to it and leave it whenever you want. But when people are trying to plan stuff, I fucking hate a group chat, okay? So, the group chat started going off, and then they were trying to, like, plan, like, which family would do which meal. Oh my god, I just went over the edge. It was too much. I had no capacity for it, especially after being triggered about, like, we only have 4 people in our family now. Oh my god, I was just crying so hard, so I had to be like, "Sorry, guys, I gotta leave this group chat." I mean, I told them why, but still. So then I just cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. Oh, and then I went to an appointment, and on the way, I was driving on the turnpike, and over on the shoulder, there was a car pulled over, and I look, and the driver is, like, sitting in the grass, and because of him sitting, the grass is, like, waist deep to him. It's not, like, short grass, like, and he didn't look happy. So I was like, "Well, what if he's having a medical emergency?" Or, like, what if he's suicidal? Like, I don't know what he's doing over there. So, in Oklahoma, we used to have a program, Star 55, that would contact Highway Patrol and you could tell them about things like this. I called Star 55. I guess it's been disconnected for a long time. So, I Google while driving the Oklahoma Highway Patrol non emergency number. This bitch answers the phone and she's like, well, whatever, however she answers the phone. I was like, "Hi, so I guess star 55 doesn't work anymore." And I mean, yes, I suck at like just getting straight to the point. I'm terrible at it. And I just, felt weird for causing an inconvenience to call about my fellow man on the fucking turnpike. But she interrupts me and is like, hasn't worked for a lot of years. It's just 911 now." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Well, I said, "Oh, well, I don't have a life-threatening emergency, so okay, thank you." And she goes, "Well, do you not need me anymore?" And I said, "Well, not if I have to call 911." And she's like, "Well, you've already got me. What do you need?" So I said, "Yeah, I was going on 344 East, blah blah blah." She let me get that part out. What I saw, she's like, "Okay, what car?" And I said, "Oh, I think it was I think it was a Chevy crossover, but it was some sort of crossover black." She's like, "Male or female?" And I was driver, and I was like, "Male." And she's like, "Okay, what's your name?" And I was like, "Melissa, MAL." She doesn't even let me finish. "What's your phone number?" And she's just cutting me off. That is such a huge trigger to me. Like, it's something that will fucking set me off. Set me off. I just hate being talked to like that. So, anyway, I was pissed. I was like, "Okay, thank." Literally, I'm just trying to get the guy help if he needs help because he was looking weird the way he was sitting. So, listen, I don't think you should take chances, you know? Like, wouldn't that be awful if I saw a news story later and, like, I didn't do something to help? So, anyway, probably fine, but that really pissed me off, and that just happened, like, on top of just some bullshit today. And then I think there was one other thing because I was like, "Oh, this is really trying to get me today, isn't it?" But I think too what I learned or what was highlighted through just today because I was just talking to a client last night about, like, just a bunch of shit happening at once with them, and I think the thing that we wanna get to is where, like, I felt all the I was crying very hard today, like, truly. I felt all of the things that came with that, and I even felt piled on and overwhelmed and just, like, blah, but I didn't make that mean anything about me. Or that the universe was punishing me or that I had done something wrong. I did think, wow, is what can I learn from that? Like, what am I supposed to learn from this? And maybe this is what I'm supposed to learn, but in either case, what I took away from today in this state while I'm still very tired and ready for sleep was it's okay to have a bad day. But then or even just a bad few hours. And then when you decompress a little bit, like making an active choice to then move forward with the next part of your day. And more shit came, but I wasn't making it mean anything about me, good or bad. I was just real neutral about it and was just like, damn, this is just a shit fucking day. And I just don't feel good now because I've cried so much, you know? So anyway, I felt like that was a good lesson and I'm grateful for that. And then I had an interview with 60 Minutes, a couple of the gals from there. They're putting a story together that will air in September. They don't know if my part will be actually part of what the finished product is. They're kind of just pulling a bunch of stories right now. And so don't know if my part will air at all, but I did at least provide them some information and it felt cool to get to talk to people from 60 Minutes. They were very kind. So, yeah, I guess that's it. Can't really think of anything else. And I do need to get to sleep soon. Check out my other show, Unquiet Soul with Angie. Check out the Patreon if you want, to kind of sit a little closer to the show. Got a little growing library of audios on there. Some old workbooks. Haven't created a new one in a minute, but there are workbooks on there. Um, but make sure, please, guess what? Guess what? Some of y'all are listening about rating and reviewing because my listen score went up. So, we're getting close to that 3%. So if you have not already, please go to Spotify or Apple, rate the show, leave a review if you haven't. Comment on an episode. Like if you're listening, I would just love if you would just comment on something on either of those platforms. Um, but also, I don't know if I get a notification because I don't get a notification when you guys review or anything. So that's kind of poo poo. So I don't really know what to do about that except for check. Um, I don't know. So, anyways, thanks for being here. I love you and I appreciate you. I don't think I have anything else. So, thanks for being patient with these solo episodes because they're not my favorite, but I have said yes to a bunch lately. So, those will be getting scheduled. So, anyway, I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Have a fabulous Friday and I'll see y'all next week. Thanks for coming to Emotionally Unavailable. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share.